Welcome to today's episode of Buildings Hub Live, where we spotlight the changemakers and technologies leading the charge to electrify our built environment. On our podcast, we tackle the issues facing building decarbonization, from space heating to electric cooking to building codes and beyond. On this episode, we'll chat with Stephen Fate, President of West Union District Energy LLC, and Derek Schnabel, Director of Facilities at Epic Systems. What goes into building a geothermal system to heat and cool networks of buildings? How does a system serving a city's downtown core differ from one serving a corporate campus? Stay tuned to find out. Here's your host, Atlas Public Policy Analyst, Stephen Naimoli.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 23rd episode of Buildings Hub Live. My name is Stephen Naimoli, Policy Analyst at Atlas Public Policy, and I have the honor of being your host today. For today's episode, we'll discuss some interesting geothermal energy network systems providing heating and cooling in the Midwest. What goes into heating and cooling a network of buildings with geothermal energy, and what are the biggest opportunities and challenges to making a system like this work? Stay with us to find out. Before we jump into our discussion, though, a quick note on Buildings Hub. Here at Atlas, we manage a one-stop shop data analysis tool for building sector electrification called the Buildings Hub. If you're interested in heat pump market data, state buildings policies and funding programs, the current makeup of the US housing stock, and crisply designed dashboards, we've got you covered. We recently published an exploration of the first commercial building in Washington, D.C. to reportedly achieve net zero energy consumption. We encourage you to register for our platform and check out our data features. We'd love to have you join the Buildings Hub community. As for this episode, we're currently live on YouTube and LinkedIn. We encourage our audience to send us your questions via the Q&A portal on our YouTube live stream, and we'll work them into the discussion. We look forward to hearing from you throughout our episode. It's now my pleasure to introduce our special guests today. We are joined by Steve Fate, President of West Union District Energy LLC, and Derek Schnabel, Facilities Director at Epic Systems. Steve and Derek, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
So we've got lots to cover in only half an hour, so let's get right into it. First of all, I just want to start off with just telling us a little bit about you and your organization, your role. Derek, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thanks. So Epic Systems, we're an electronic health records company. And so essentially we're a software manufacturer. Our primary clientele is healthcare systems around the world. Our global headquarters is here in Verona, Wisconsin, which is just outside of Madison. I think today there's probably about 13,000 of us here. So it's a rather large campus, almost 2,000 acres, 40 or more buildings, most all of which are heated and cooled by a geothermal system. My background's in mechanical engineering, so I studied thermal fluid sciences, was kind of well suited to help with a system of this size and scale.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Steve, what about you?
Well, I'm with the West Union District Energy LLC, and I represent our public library on this group. I don't have a background in science or geothermal or too much else. I was a professional counselor for 41 years. So I've learned a lot in my time with this group. The goal of the LLC, and the LLC is made up of users of the geosystem. So if your building is hooked into the geosystem, you're automatically a member of the LLC, all the benefits that come with it, or penalties, not many. The city actually owns the geosystem, and the LLC leases it from the city. Like we usually run a long-term 5-year lease. It basically covers, our expenses basically cover the insurance, the city's expenses. So that's where I'm at with it.
Great, thanks. Steve, let's stick with you because you started talking a little about the project. Tell us a little bit about the system at West Union and kind of how this project came about.
Well, if we go back, the project the talking for the project probably started in about 2005. And the goal was looking at our downtown area, and the infrastructure had to be redone. So they really started looking to see what to do. West Union became designated in several different areas, and I'm going to say probably Iowa Economic Development Authority helped with that a lot. And so some forward-looking people started saying, well, let's make the downtown more sustainable. And the downtown area is considered part of the Turkey River conservation area. So the first step was, let's rip out the streets. We're going to rip them out anyway, and the sidewalks, and let's replace them with permeable pavers. Storm drains are gone. Rain gardens are in. And then even more forward-thinking people back in the 2006, 2007 range said, geez, for downtown businesses, why don't we take a look at geothermal? And those forward-looking people started pursuing geothermal. And believe it or not, as they pursued it through various grants, our system, geothermal system, actually went in at a cost of $0. That's how much money they were able to generate. That will never happen again, I don't think, but it did that time. So therefore, we got the geothermal system installed. So ask away for any other follow-up on that.
That's great. Thank you. I want to come back to that, but let's jump over to Derek. Derek, tell me a little bit about how the project at your headquarters came about.
Sure. We were located in Madison throughout the 90s and began growing and needing more space in the early 2000s. So we found this tract of land here in Verona, and we really pride ourselves on being here for the long haul for our customers. And so we've told ourselves repeatedly as we construct not only our energy systems, but our buildings, that we're building 100-year buildings and 100-year systems. And so we also pride ourselves in doing the right thing. So the geothermal system is part of a portfolio that includes wind and solar power, very energy efficient building systems, exterior wall systems and roof systems. And so our decision to build the geo system was part of a more global, account, if you want to call it that, that's here for the long haul. And it was a bit longer of a payback at the time when we decided to first do it. But we're glad we did. It's paid back already. And so again, it was about doing the right thing, being here for the long haul, seeing the payback and understanding that if we're going to be here 100, 200 years, then a 15-year payback's no big deal. And so that's how we came about it. And we have a tinge of sustainability throughout most of what we do, whether it be our recycling programs, our food waste programs for our culinary venues. So this is, like I said, really part of a more global, greater portfolio of who we are and what our culture is, I would say.
Great, thank you. And I would encourage our audience, if you haven't already, there's been some coverage of their headquarters in news and videos and things like that. It's really interesting and really cool. So definitely recommend checking that out. Steve, let's come back to you. You mentioned that these very forward-thinking folks back in the mid-2000s were thinking, we're going to be tearing this up, replacing the infrastructure anyway. Why not geothermal? Why geothermal, I guess, is a question that some may be asking.
Well, I think it went along, first of all, with the overall theme of sustainability in the downtown area. And, it's going to be with the water runoff. Geothermal, obviously, is a very clean way to heat and cool your buildings. And they also saw it as they worked through this down the line, being a very cost-effective system, which we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But that's what it has become. And there were some experiments that they were put in, and some of them worked great, some of them didn't work so great. One of our buildings that's the Chamber Main Street building, actually has a green roof, and it's now been there for 14 years. It still functions beautifully. There was an awful lot of things tried in West Union. Geothermal was just one of those things.
I love to hear that. People talk a lot about states are the laboratories of democracy, but I think cities and towns and villages are often the laboratories of all kinds of things. You can do all kinds of really interesting things. People are doing all kinds of really cool things. So I love to hear that.
Yes.
Derek, how about you? What was sort of the value proposition of geothermal for Epic's campus?
Again, it was about doing the right thing from a sustainability perspective, and then understanding that the energy conservation, the payback is quite simply there. And I'm glad we did it. We've grown far beyond what we imagined we would. We thought we'd be 5 buildings. We thought we'd be 10. We thought we'd be 20, and now we're 50. Or whatever. I don't know the exact number, right? So I'm glad it's scalable. I'm glad we did it because our footprint is now pretty significant. But again, it was really just about doing the right thing. Economically, it pays back, which is great. But it just felt like who we are and part of our ethos. And I wish it was more complicated than that, but it quite simply isn't.
No, I mean, so often it's as simple as elegant, right? A simple answer is an elegant answer.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, so we know with projects like this, for both of you, both of your kind of jurisdictions, let's say, it requires, no one's ever able to do everything all alone, so it requires a lot of partnerships that need to be forged. Derek, what kinds of partnerships with what types of kinds of other groups or companies or places do you need to try to forge partnerships with to get the project done and also sort of...
It's a good question. I mean, it's quite the range. You have to partner with the right folks that have the right expertise to design and build it and do it properly out of the gate. From a regulatory perspective, the Wisconsin DNR has been a tremendous help. The city of Verona has been great. And so long as we all approach it together, which is from a learning perspective, like this is a relatively new technology, 25 years old. We really just started doing this. And so we're all trying to do the right thing and learn together. So we had great state and local agencies that wanted to learn alongside with us and give us a little bit of freedom to figure it out, if you will, right? So it takes good design and construction partners. It takes, great agencies to help you accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And then we've also partnered with the University of Wisconsin, specifically their geological department, to study how these geothermal systems interact with the ground. And so the UW has published some wonderful papers and some wonderful studies to help the engineering industry at large understand how to size these systems, how to operate these systems, how they may or may not interact with the ground and the water around them. So I think the common theme there is learning throughout, right? Pick partners that are willing to learn and explore in a safe and responsible way. And that's what I would say.
It sounds like there's a really great theme of like being able to iterate and experiment and learn, both in both of these projects, whether it's within, like technologically or from an approach wise or just being able to scale, I think is really appealing here. Steve, your system, of course, Epic system is kind of contained within their footprint. Your system in the city is connecting a lot of different buildings. Would you say it's a similar kind of process in terms of forging partnerships, or are there kind of different sorts of relationships you need to navigate to make things happen there in West Union?
Yeah, well, we're as you said, we're connecting buildings, both privately owned and publicly owned in our downtown area. So obviously the most important partnerships is the partnership between all the LLC members. So whoever is responsible for those buildings is a member. So to have that partnership, some of our partners are very, very active, some not as active, and that's just a choice you make. We also have to have a very good partnership and relationship with the city, because it's where we operate. They own the system and we just manage it. And for us, we're a county, what's called an Iowa county seat town. And we have a very good partnership with our board of supervisors for the county. The courthouse square, the courthouse sits in the middle of the square and businesses surround it. And part of the partnership with them is when the 132 300-foot wells went in for our geo system. They are all in the courthouse yard. And all the equipment to operate and run this system is in the courthouse basement. So that partnership has been very, very important. And their input, and we help each other out as whenever we can. That's been very, very important. And I will say that one thing that's been important for us is we do contract with a service provider to come in and maintain the system. And that partnership is very important. We have a person we trust, we really rely on him, and he always has good information for us and has done a good job. And I say today, that's one of our major partnerships that we have.
I'd like to add on to that, Stephen, if I could, because I completely agree with what Steve said. There's an expertise to operating this system, these types of systems, right? And that it can be done well and it can be done poorly.
Yeah.
And so, I'm fortunate to work for an organization that's invested in engineering capabilities to operate ourselves. I've seen some other instances where a geo system was installed, but maybe they didn't have the expertise
Yes.
to understand exactly how to operate it, but they weren't quite willing to go find a partner like Steve has to do it for them. And they can turn into a bit of an energy pig, if you will, if they're not quite operated the right way.
Yes.
So it takes a commitment, not only to have the vision to do it, which it sounds like Steve and I, our leadership shares in common, but a commitment to operate it effectively.
Yeah. And if I could jump on that too, along with the service provider, we put it out for open bids, mainly being cost conscious and to find a good person at the lowest cost, which we did. But the other thing we also did is put out for a competitive bid, someone to provide software for the system.
Mm-hmm.
So our service provider, who's probably 40 miles from West Union, can now sit in every morning. I know he pops up his computer. He monitors how everything in the system is running. And that's just been great. Mm-hmm. He's ahead of the curve always. He'll call and say, I think we got this going on or that going on. And well, let's get on it and we'll get it taken care of. But those two things, the monitoring and the provider, both are important. So
agreed.
We've touched on a little bit, but I want to just kind of explicitly address, what kinds of benefits have you seen from these projects? Steve, why don't we start with you?
Well, some of this I would probably speak just overall. Obviously, one benefit we have is environmental impact. We feel, and the people that are advocates for this in our downtown area, that's a big deal for them. We're not using fossil fuels for it. The second thing is cost. I'm going to say 3.5, 4 years ago, when I became more involved with this organization and became the chairperson of the group, just to give you an idea, we don't meter our system. So what we do is we take it on total tons of the units that you have in a building. So 5-ton unit, you're paying by the ton. And that's been equitable and it's been worked out well for us. Just to give you an example, for cost effectiveness for the library, our public library is approximately 13,000 square feet. So it's a big building. And it's not a building you want to heat up and cool off at night because it takes too long to warm back up the next day. There's just too much mass in it. Our library contains not just the library, but when we did renovations, and part of that was with the support of the GEO because it made it possible, we also created 4 rental spaces. And some are long-term leases and some are just events that people can rent space for. But in January, for us to heat and cool the library is going to cost us $224 a month. We just lowered our rates again. In the last 4 years, we've gone down to $14, from $14 a ton. We're now down to $8 a ton. And I was suspecting the spring we'll probably drop that down to 7, if not 6. The other expense we've got always, of course, is electricity. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. Electrical rates keep going up. The city was wise. Every building in West Union has solar panels for power. Probably about 80% of their power comes from it. The difficult thing was for a small town, the solar was put in by a company, and there's like basically a long-term lease, so it's metered. So when that lease runs out, and the library is planning, if nothing else, to get our own panels under library control, I'm guessing that we'll probably be heating and cooling 13,000 square feet, and we'll be doing it for less than 50 cents a square foot.
Wow, that's excellent.
So, if you consider that for taxpayers, that's a real benefit for taxpayers.
Yeah.
That reduces our budget. The courthouse is exactly the same. They're hooked into the system, and theirs is a cost that saves money for the county. So
That's amazing. That's really great.
I had the numbers until somebody was interested. One other group I was talking with, I went back and reran the numbers. Actually, it was Phil McKenna. And we refigured, and our costs just keep going down just with the solar or with the geos. But when you add solar into it, if we own the panels, we got it made. It's just it's just a cost savings. It just is, and it's the same for businesses.
Agreed.
Well, on that note, Derek, what kinds of benefits have you found?
Yeah, it's interesting. And there's the obvious ones, which Steve mentioned, which is the sustainability, the efficiency, the payback. There's a couple of other interesting ones, right? Which is, I think, goodwill, right? So we're a large neighbor here in Verona, and I think showing and committing to doing what we think is the right thing long term is helpful for our neighbors. It's also helpful as a recruiting tool, quite frankly, for young new talent that we're trying to recruit to see a company that's committed to doing the right thing long term. So I think there's a goodwill component to it it's not contrived. It's just an outcome of our intent, right? The other one that I think gets overlooked is longevity. So the piping in the ground replaces an outdoor piece of equipment. It could be a cooling tower, it could be a chiller, air-cooled chiller, it could be a rooftop unit. Those things all fail within 15 to 25 years and require replacement, right? Mm-hmm. My wife and I built our house about 10 years ago. I'm already in the back of my mind thinking about saving up for a water heater and a new air conditioner, right? We don't know how long these pipes are going to last in the ground. And we don't know that because they haven't failed yet, right? It's a relatively simple heat rejection system. And so again, as a company that really believes we're going to be here for the long haul, to know that there's that longevity of what we'd invested in, that's a big deal to us. So I think that's an underestimated component of these systems.
Yes, it is. Estimated infrastructure when our loop went in was the loop itself would last for 65 years.
Yeah.
But that's only an estimate because nobody's ever had one in for 65.
You're exactly right. I've heard 50, but that's just because engineers are conservative and won't go beyond 50. I
probably talked to wild engineers when they said
cowboys.
Well, so I'm wondering, what kinds of challenges have you encountered? Either whether it's sort of the installation process or whether it's the kind of ongoing operations or any other sort of things that are posed there. Derek, why don't you start?
It's a good question. The first is, we're in southern Wisconsin. It's pretty chilly. It was below freezing here this morning. And we've chosen to operate a raw water system with no glycol, what you might call antifreeze. And so this is our primary utility system. And, we're supporting a very critical infrastructure as far as our healthcare partners and our healthcare clients. So uptime is paramount and required, and downtime is not an option, right? And so you're operating a raw water system in a freezing climate. So that takes careful consideration and careful control. So that's just one thing for us to watch. The second is there are some people that have a bit of a misunderstanding about what a geothermal system is. And so some of our neighbors perceive it to be interacting with the groundwater. So whereas it's not, it's a closed loop system that the water's in a pipe the whole time. It never touches the groundwater. They don't interact whatsoever besides thermally. So we do battle some misconception around what the impacts to the nearby neighbors could be, but we manage that through outreach and understanding and and learning and sharing.
Steve, what about you?
Well, biggest challenge, I think, has been, and it's getting to be less and less. Every downtown building in West Union, the geosystem is stubbed up to the building or into the building, depending on what the owners wanted. And we slowly keep adding more and more users. And we know that some of that is some people, when this unit started up, they had new gas furnaces in their building. And as a matter of, I'm not going to replace something new, but as their furnaces age, we're offering enough incentives to make it a good deal for them to put in a geo unit. So slowly that's being added in. In some cases in small town, some people simply said, I have no interest in such a thing as that. I'll never put it in, period. Well, and that's fine. I'm not going to disagree with that at all. Mm-hmm. But it is a matter of that. I know in the last several years now, 2 of the buildings that absolutely would never go into those buildings, oddly enough, the buildings were sold. And a new owner comes in and says, yeah, I'd really like to do the geo, or we have one in process right now that's from a grant. It's partially funding the renovations of the building. And part of that grant was to have geo installed.
Interesting.
So that's a state grant. It's just there. It's going to go in. And I know that once they get it in, they're going to enjoy it. They're going to like it. It's just the way to go for us in our area. So that's I'm going to say that's the thing that's probably the biggest challenge, is to continue to expand slowly.
Mm-hmm. Derek, what I think, so just thinking a little bit about, we've talked a little bit about kind of what the sort of benefits and challenges. We've talked a little bit about the, what the experience has been like building it, maintaining it, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But this is a pretty, I would say, rare, I guess, technology that we don't see very often. Have you found other companies have come to you to say, hey, we're interested in doing something similar. We want to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, that's very common. As people explore the technology and become more comfortable with it, I give a fair amount of tours. I gave one yesterday, quite frankly, with a community member that's interested. I think people understand the benefit, but I think it's new. 25 years old doesn't feel new, but it's still new to a lot of people. And I came from an engineering background before Epic. It's tough as the engineering consultant to recommend something that feels cutting edge, leading edge, maybe not bleeding edge anymore. So I think there's trepidation just based on that. And again, it is a long-term investment, right? So depending upon your goals and your expertise, it's not for everybody. So as much as I'm proud of what we do and I'm grateful for what we do, I don't recommend it for everybody if it doesn't align with their mission, vision, and values and their commitment to operating it long term. So it's not for everybody, but it's for people with that similar mindset.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. Steve, what about you? Have you found other cities have come to you to say they're interested in doing a similar kind of model?
Yeah, we've I would say probably, especially in the last year and a half or so, it's just getting more and more frequent. We've had a number of video chats such as this with different communities and different groups. It's not unusual for me just to get a cold phone call, and that ranges from somebody who's working on a project. Sometimes it's just, and I kind of enjoy these, it's just a graduate student with a question about a system. He came across us on something and calls. We did have a group that came from Vermont this past year. It was a Vermont Community Thermal Network. Debbie New heads it up. And she and 2 of her members, 2 of her co-workers, came to visit West Union and to tour things, to ask questions and see how it operated. And that one was especially interesting to me because what she was taking back was she saw the town of West Union, she was taking it back to Vermont for towns of similar size and similar needs. And she's very enthusiastic, and I know she's already made progress on that, and kind of keeps expanding her network. She's still got, this lady has a lot of ideas. So anyway, yes, we talked to a lot of people. We're not selling the system. We're just showing what we did.
That's a good way to put it. I feel the same. Yep.
I love to hear that. Just lightning round, our last question here. What's coming next? Steve, why don't we start with you?
Well, the safe thing is to say, well, the next thing is going to be, we're going to maintain and continue to add users in our downtown area. And we will do that. We did from the earlier grants, and it's really, I think what everybody says now is it's simply because they had the money to do it. We have probably about 4 to 5 blocks from the downtown area. We have another setup that has 2 larger pumps in it than what we have downtown. And there's been a test well already done. It's suitable. And if we were to look at it, it could be expanded, and that would be more residential and probably, I'm not going to say medical, maybe it might be that. That'd be more of a residential setup. And I guess what I would say with that is I have no opposition to that. Probably won't be around when that happens. But, that would take some capital, and that would take some work to finance it. So we're always looking at ways to expand it if we can. And, that's a major step that one would be.
I hope that's able to move forward.
Yeah.
Derek, what about you?
It's a good question. For us, it's pretty simple, going deeper. And I know that seems simple. I think, Steve, you mentioned your bores are 300 to 350 feet deep. Is that correct?
300 feet, yeah.
Yeah, so our first iteration was about 300. Our second's more in the 400 range. Our third and fourth are touching 5 to 550 feet deep per bore. And my fifth bore field, which we're constructing right now, is more in the 800 to 850 foot deep range. And that's true both here in Verona and an overseas application in the UK I've got going. And why that's important is we can get more capacity out of the same tract of land, right? And so we can consume fewer acres to accomplish the same goal. Technology is getting better as far as the piping's ability to handle that amount of just geological pressure, right? That deep in the ground. So I think we've also seen newer drilling technologies come to the market. Oil and gas guys are seeing more and more people interested in it. And so they're bringing their drilling technology with. And so we're finding non-traditional well drillers coming to the market that are allowing us to just expand our capacity out of a set 40 acres of land, if you will. So I think going deeper and getting more efficient within a smaller footprint is what's next for the market.
That's exciting.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more about what happens there. Well, thanks to both of you so much for joining us. This has been a great talk. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. You'll be able to find a recording of this episode and any of our past episodes anywhere you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And check out atlasbuildingshub.com to read our digests and data stories and to join our community. Stay tuned for a new episode of Buildings Hub Live soon, and we'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Buildings Hub Live. You can listen to this episode and all other installments in our podcast on the Atlas YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you're interested in additional content, check out our data, articles, and dashboards on Buildings Hub at atlasbuildingshub.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you again soon.